Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's 1 o'clock in Central and Eastern Europe, and therefore welcome to the webinar organized by the Renew Group in the European Parliament, webinar about Central and Eastern Europe at energy crossroads. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's 1 o'clock in... and I would like to welcome you wholeheartedly because this is a very important topic that we're going to be discussing. The climate change and the climate crisis that we face has put up in front of us lots of challenges, and often we see that the Central and Eastern Europe is portrayed as the area where we have a hard time, so to say, to catch up. We have a hard time to go for the energy transition. And you might remember that last year it was a trio of Central and Eastern European countries who were refusing to sign up to the carbon neutrality targets by 2050. I'm very happy that Slovakia wasn't one of them. And I'm also happy that by now it's only one country, Poland, sadly, which still hasn't committed to carbon neutrality by 2050. And I hope that this will change. Despite all the political and financial support from the Commission, from us in the Parliament and other member states, the region is still in a need of catch-up, and it is very affected by the changes that we are facing. Now, we often hear that we are poor and we don't have the means, and we have to change from coal to gas. That we need to now invest in the transition fuel, and the renewables are something which is not for us. And believe me that what you hear often on the European level, it's nothing compared to the discourse within the region itself. And I must say this is a myth. I strongly believe that the Central Europe is a region which offers great opportunities for development of renewables, and actually has pioneers, has innovation coming from the region. It is the lack of ambition and it's the lack of political will to invest in the best options. And sadly, it's often, in my view, caused also by the influence of often formerly state-owned massive fossil fuel enterprises and the influence these companies have on the political decisions. The potential of renewable energy and energy efficiency, which should come first, in the Central and Eastern Europe is tremendous. But often states, instead of supporting them, disincentivize them and are, so to say, trying to hold them back. This is despite the fact that it would help us not only to reach the climate neutrality, but to reach it with the positive economic outcomes in the process, including the creation of thousands of jobs, additional savings, and modernizing and strengthening the resiliency of our economy and energy supply. Because the green and digital transition is not a threat. This is a real opportunity, and nowhere so much more as in the Central Europe, in my view. We need to really leapfrog and start playing the catch-up game. So I sincerely hope that our discussion today will not only dispel this myth, but also help us to bring about change. And let me welcome my co-organizer, Morten Petersen, from Renew Europe as well.
Thank you, Martin, and thanks for your introduction. And I've also been looking very much forward to this seminar, because in order to fulfill all our ambitions in Green Deal and the transition to climate neutrality, I mean, we have to have all countries and regions on board. And I come from Denmark, a country that is so fortunate that we have a lot of opportunities in renewables right outside our country, having the North Sea and the Baltic Sea surrounding us. We have tremendous opportunities and potentials in terms of offshore wind, which is extremely useful, obviously, and of great luck for my country. But I think it's just such an important point that we have to have all regions and countries on board. And these potentials will obviously vary country to country. So getting a clearer picture of what's doable and the opportunities and potentials in various regions is extremely important and useful. So I've been looking very much forward to this seminar, learning more about opportunities in Central and Eastern European countries and learning more about these potentials. So given the enormous task ahead of us, we have to make this transition. We have to make it work. And this implies that the regions and countries and citizens will have to be on board, should be on board. And this is what we absolutely should strive for. So all this to say, Martin, I've been looking very much forward to this, and thank you for driving this and leading on this. So I'm looking forward to the next couple of hours. And I mean, we have a great lineup of speakers coming in and telling us more about all the potential. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Martin. Are you taking it from here to and introducing the speaker? That's great. That's great. Thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you, Morten. And yeah, I'm really happy to be able to do this thing with you. And as a first, we have 3 keynote speakers, and I think they really represent the variety that we need, because I'm very pleased to have as a first keynote speaker, Mr. Hans van Steen, Acting Director on Renewables Research and Innovation, Energy Efficiency and DG Ener from the European Commission, because we need the Commission to really help to facilitate and really help to the countries in Central Europe to uncover their own potential sometimes. So over to you, Mr. van Steen.
Thank you very much, Martin, and also thank you for the very kind introduction, and thank you also to Morten for co-organizing this event here today. From the Commission side, we're very pleased to take part because indeed, as you both said, this is really an important topic. Renewable energy is an absolute cornerstone of the energy transition, and renewable energy has to happen everywhere. So I think it's very, very useful that we are here today to discuss some of the challenges that we are currently facing, not just in Central and Eastern Europe, but I think in the EU as a whole. I think it's also a good moment because, I mean, there's so much happening on energy and climate policies in the EU right now. I think it really absolutely underlines the role of energy in combating climate change. 75% of emissions, as you know, can be directly linked back to the energy sector. And therefore, if we are unable to completely transform the way we use and produce energy in the next 30 years, the ambition to be climate neutral by the middle of this century is simply not possible. So energy is a key issue, and that I think is very much reflected in the agenda that you're seeing being pushed forward by the Commission these days. But even before that, we of course had the Clean Energy for All Europeans package with the Renewable Energy Directive in 2018, where we have, we think, ambitious targets for renewables for the EU as a whole, but also translated into targets for every member state, although they're not binding. And we have now seen that these targets that we set ourselves, the 32% target at EU level, is in reality insufficient to meet the ambition of climate neutrality. We need to aim higher, both when it comes to renewable energy, when it comes to energy efficiency, and certainly when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions. And the Commission has already said very clearly that we need at least to have a reduction of emissions of greenhouse gases of 55% by 2030. And that, of course, has very important implications, both for renewables and for energy efficiency. That is why the Commission has taken a number of very important initiatives recently. And that is why we have also clearly announced that we are going to review and revise both the energy efficiency, but also the Renewable Energy Directive by the middle of next year. But just for us all to recap what it is that we have been doing previously in this year. Well, first of all, we produced what we call the energy system integration strategy together with the hydrogen strategy, because we believe that we need to think about energy in a different way than we have been thinking so far. We need to look at energy across the board in all sectors of our economy, transport, industry, agriculture, buildings, everywhere. We need really to have an integrated strategy, because that's the only way that this is going to work. And we realized when we did this strategy, we need specifically to look at hydrogen, because hydrogen is a potential enabler of renewables in sectors where electrification is perhaps not the most obvious solution. All that came out in July of this year, and I hope you've been studying. I know Parliament is now working on an opinion on all of this, and we look very much forward, obviously, to working with you on all of that. This is necessary because we need all sectors to contribute. There's no single silver bullet solution for decarbonization of our energy systems. That has to be across the board, and it has to happen pretty fast. And that's why the accelerated energy transition has a pivotal role to play. The impact assessment that came together with the so-called climate target plan, which was where we talked about the 55%, proposed the 55% greenhouse gas emission reductions, showed, we think, very clearly that not only is this necessary in order to reach our climate ambitions, it is also entirely feasible, and it can be done without having any kind of negative impacts on our economies, on our welfare, and our standard of living. In fact, in many ways, it can contribute also to improve these things. The other thing we should not forget is that we are doing all these things in the middle of a global health crisis, a pandemic, which of course are not making things easier. But we have to turn that into an opportunity, because what we know is that in order to get out of the pandemic, we need investments. And it is critically important that these investments are made into the right kind of things, including in the energy sector. And in fact, the energy sector holds an enormous potential for bringing our economy back to speed. Again, that's why we also came out with the renovation wave for building renovation, because that is a sector that is particularly important. And there, by the way, also talking about renewable energy, there's a huge potential for renewable energy. Not only, shall we say, in relation to renewables on the individual houses, like rooftop solar PV, but also to bring renewable energy into collective heating systems, district heating based on various types of renewables, an enormous potential. And we need to be able to use this opportunity we have, in fact, to accelerate our energy transition. And a lot of the money which is made available now, for example, through the Next Generation EU programs, should really go into these type of investments. And for sure, it is not feasible to think that we would continue to fund things which actually do not contribute to the energy transition. We need to make sure that this money goes into the right investments. For renewables itself, as I said, we currently have a target of 32%, but what we see from the impact assessment that came out with the climate target plan, that we need to have somewhere in the region of 38 to 40% for the EU as a whole, as the share of renewables in our energy mix by 2030. And that is a lot, because it means in reality another doubling. You know, we did a doubling from the first Renewable Energy Directive in 2008, from around 8.5% up to 20%, so a little more than a doubling. We are now almost reaching our target at EU level to 20%, but if we have to go now to 40%, this is another doubling. And this is not just, shall we say, evolution of renewables, this is really stepping up and taking it to a completely different level. And one of the things that also Morten mentioned that we need to bring into play better is the offshore potential, because that is a potential which is out there. And that's why the Commission came forward with the offshore renewable energy strategy only very, very recently. If we look at the EU, we see, of course, very different situations for different member states. Both between East and West, but also along many other dimensions, which are due to a different potential for renewables, different traditions. Some countries started earlier, some are only now really starting to pick up on renewables. So we see, of course, a very diverse picture. Within the Central and Eastern European countries that we should focus on today, we also see quite different levels of renewables. Croatia, for example, has a relatively high share today, I think close to 30%, whereas many others are still hovering around the 10%, and in fact also struggling to meet, what shall we say, the indicative targets that were set for 2020. The good news is that we know that there is a very good potential for renewable energy in Central and Eastern Europe. We know that from a number of studies, including one which we have been contributing to, which has been done by the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, that showed that, in fact, Central and Southeastern Europe could cover 34% of their rising energy demand cost effectively with renewables. That's a lot. That, of course, looks specifically at the CESEC region, but that includes many Central and Eastern European countries as well. And I think overall, we know the potential is there, and it really could help enormously. I mean, for example, just for the CESEC region, where the report that I just mentioned highlights the benefits of accelerating the take-up of renewables, could actually save the citizens in that region an estimated 3 billion euros per year in energy costs. And that's not even counting, so we say, all the other costs that are more indirect, which is related to environmental problems, health issues, and climate damage that the continued use of fossil fuels will lead to. So there's an enormous benefit, and that's a very, I think, essential message to bring across, that this is not something that we have to do just because we need to fight climate change, just in inverted commas. This is something that we need because it will bring growth and renewed economic prosperity and welfare to the entire region. It will bring jobs and economic growth with it. That doesn't mean that it will be easy. It requires a lot of work, and I think there's also a lot of work still to be done in Central and Eastern Europe. We need to look at how the renewable energy can be absorbed by the grid. Of course, once you start to introduce much higher shares of variable electricity into the grid, and that is often the case when renewables, not always, because you also have renewables that can produce base load, but a lot of renewables, wind and solar in particular, are variable, and that of course brings challenges to the grid. And that's some of the things that we often hear, including from Central and Eastern European countries, that is really difficult to manage. No, it is, well, it might be difficult, but it's not impossible. We know from experience that it can be done. Morten, who mentioned the Danish example, shows that you can handle on an average well over 40% wind energy in the grid if you apply modern grid management techniques. So I think that is really important. We also need to work on issues related to how you give permissions to these things. The administrative procedures are very often not helpful in order to help higher shares of renewables. Something else that is an issue in Central and Eastern Europe is the low prices of fossil fuels, because I mean we are in a market situation. We're even in an internal market situation in many cases for energy, and there of course the different fuels are competing with each other. But if they're not competing at a level playing field, there's a problem, and that is still the case, that energy prices are kept artificially low in certain countries in the EU, and they're not reflecting the real costs of fossil fuels when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions or overall pollution, then the incentives for renewables obviously are not very high. We know, of course, that there are often reasons why the energy prices are kept at an artificially low prices. There are social reasons, which means that there's a clear link between bringing in a level playing field and combating energy poverty. That has to be done, and that is also very clearly on the Commission's radar in this sense. I mentioned already that we need to make sure that some of the funds that we have available at European level are going into this. And there's quite a lot of them available, not only from the recovery money, which are coming through, but also in many other areas, regional funds, structural funds, technical assistance can also be used very often, for example, from Elena and other things. So there are very many opportunities there that should be fully explored. And now we're also including the possibility of using the recovery grants with the Union Renewable Financing Mechanism that we have just put into operation, as you will probably know. This is a system whereby we can help meet energy targets on renewables through a mechanism which actually means that renewables generated and produced in one member state can count towards the renewable share in other member states. I think that is a wonderful opportunity, and it might also be a way whereby additional investment could come into some of the Central and Eastern European countries where there is still a large cost-effective and cost-efficient potential to be used. I will perhaps leave it there to say that the Commission, of course, monitors very, very closely what goes on. We monitor this through, for example, the national energy and climate plans that all member states have produced, and where we see that it's sort of not every member state which, shall we say, pulls it full weight in the progress towards this. Some member states, I mean, of course, we don't know for sure, but we sometimes have the impression that there is still, maybe a tendency to say there's renewables is still an expensive option, which, by the way, is not the case. And maybe thinking that if we wait a little bit, costs will probably come down further. Now, I think costs will come down further, because if you've seen the trend over the last many years, it's just a complete downward trend all along, and that's likely to continue. But it is still not the right approach to wait. We need to do these things now. We need to do them together. Everybody can do it, and it is not a sacrifice. It is an opportunity, and I think this seminar can hopefully help to show that that is indeed the case, and therefore I'm really happy again for you having organized this. I think it is a good opportunity, and from the Commission side we will of course continue to be ready to help in whichever way we can, and bring forward best practices and help push also on the technology front through, for example, new technological inventions on renewables through the Horizon program and through the SET plan and other things. So on all fronts, the Commission will be pushing very hard, because we know we need to do that if we are to meet, shall we say, a second doubling of renewables in the next 10 years. That is a challenging, but indeed necessary and completely feasible objective. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much again, and I look very much forward to hearing the other speakers in this seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hans. Really important words. I wrote a number of notes, but I'm not going to try to take up space from the keynotes. Just two issues. One thing is it's really important what you stress in the energy and climate action plans. And that's something what actually showcased for me how a number of the countries in Central, and your assessment from the Commission of these plans, how the countries are underestimating the potential, which I find really, really sad. And it's true that we have very different situations. Coming from a landlocked country, you know, the offshore potential in terms of wind is zero because we don't have a shore. But we have actually lots of energy that we literally sit on, and that's geothermal. And that's where I'm trying to bridge to the next keynote speaker, who is Igor Kočiš from GE Drilling, which I have known for years, I have to say. And even from times where GE Drilling wasn't called GE Drilling, but geothermal anywhere, because that's what they are about ways to harness the energy that we sit on in a way that it's also super interesting from cost perspective, because that's been one of the major obstacles for the geothermal energy is the cost of the drilling. So Igor, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Martin, very much for the nice introduction and invitation into this discussion. And I would maybe start more in general, also to continue what Mr. Van Steen was mentioning as what is a precondition to healthy, cleaner life, and also what you said, affordable economically. And definitely we see this proportionality of the pollutants or the CO2 emissions. The energy is the key point where we have to really start, because if we are not able to solve the energy, then we have the big trouble, because the other things are not so much contributing into the all the mix. So let me share now a few views. I will start presentation. Okay, so hopefully you can see it. So now I will jump directly into what I want to show you more. Not only the perspective of the Europe or our energy, because I think energy and definitely the climate change is a global problem. And if we solve in a best way our problems in Europe, it doesn't mean that all the world is doing the same. So for us, it's important in our organization that we, exactly as Martin mentioned, that our claim is geothermal anywhere. And that's one thing, this anywhere is important, that we have to develop the systems that will be affordable, sustainable, because mostly when we look to several billions of the people that are living out of the boundaries of the Europe, that it's first important to get any kind of energy to get the benefits of the civilization. So if we can imagine that you can deliver the clean energy into the communities that do not have today the access to them, and you have the energy, you have the clean environment, then you can easily get to the, or much easier to the water and food that you can get. And that's something that is solving several other grand global challenges that are known. And of course, for us as in Europe, maybe we have to increase and keep the sustainable quality of our lives. But when we are looking outside with all the threats of the migrations and all the potential threats that are in next several tens of years due to the climate change, I think we have a great opportunity from Europe to help with the new solutions to solve the problems, and therefore to contribute directly and indirectly to the things that are happening in a global scale. If we look to the general numbers that are coming from different agencies, like for example, I took the Energy International Agency regarding the forecasts, there is a significant growth of the, or yearly growth of the renewables. But on the other hand, if you look in a global scale of the demand on the energy, we are even very hard able to close this gap that is created mostly by countries like India, Africa, and the others. And the target is that definitely we are doing a lot of things in these years and months, but it is still not enough. And we should be much more ambitious, not only in the, let's say, quantitative way. It means that to enlarge the current solutions that are, but also to look very innovatively to all the potential energies that we can utilize and have in the mix that they can help to keep at least these targets that we set in Paris, because when we see what's happening still today, we are in global scale quite far from these targets, and year is meeting another year, and mostly the target is to fully retrofit the existing fossil fuels. And that's my another point, that we are very dependent for at least next 10-20 years from the fossil fuels due to the many reasons, but it is absolutely not acceptable way forward, and definitely not even to launch new coal power plants, how it's happening in many countries outside of the Europe. But also our task here, mentioned Poland was one of the countries in East Central Europe that has a 70% even more from the coal, and it means that's a first task to retrofit it. And we have several solutions, that is mentioned wind or then the solar, but depends on the geography and the different conditions on the countries, that even we are doing a lot of here. We cannot fit to all the energy demand and the mix with the current solutions. And first, what is the difference is that, for example, in solar, when you are going to more north countries in Europe, and mostly the demand of the energy is during the winter, when we have to heat everything, the solar becomes less and less important in this energy mix. So therefore, we have to look for the solutions that can make it happen. And if you look from some view that you have the energies that are on demand, that you can switch it on and off, but also you can look from the perspective, is dirty or clean. The fossil fuels, what is absolute advantage, you can switch it on, you can use it when it's needed, but unfortunately it's very dirty. Something better, and there's of course controversial topic, is nuclear, depends on the country's policies. That is some transition kind of the energy that could help regarding the CO2 footprint. But generally, when we look to the good energies, it means clean. Solar wind definitely delivers a lot of energy, but problem is that it's discontinuous. It means that you cannot rely 100% on that, and in the whole energy mix, you have to balance it somehow with some systems. And we were looking, when we started our way forward, what could be one of the solutions. Also, we in Europe, we are rich of that, and to look for something that is clean, but on the other hand, can be dispatchable or on demand. It can run 24 hours a day. And this question, we find the answer for us, and is a geothermal energy. That is the energy that we have to some extent in some specific areas, its utilization. But unfortunately, as I want to show you here, these demands for this missing part of the energy mix is that it should not be only renewable, but great would be if it will be available anywhere, and also baseload. It means that you can rely on that and be delivered at competitive price all the time as is needed. And why the geothermal? Maybe just very general points, if it is renewable and where it is. First answer is that is anywhere. It means it's below our feet, and also it lasts for several billions of years, so it's much longer than mankind potentially will be here in Earth. It means it's from this point of view is renewable. Only the way, what is the biggest problem is how we can get it, how we can access it in a cheap way. Because most important now point, if you look for the map of Europe, is that where you can use it today, and the answer is that you can use it only in the areas that are with temperatures very high, close to the surface. So you can use this mostly oil and gas drilling technologies that were used till today for accessing these reservoirs that are 3-4 kilometers deep. And typically we have only two regions that are today efficient in that. It's Iceland, and it's a place in Tuscany called Lardalero. When it's some old stratovolcano, you can get hundreds of megawatts of the baseload energy. It means, for example, this place in Tuscany is delivering the amount of energy that is comparable with 2 blocks of the nuclear power station. So it's almost 1 gigawatt. So that's something that is really extraordinary, because the advantage of the geothermal is that it can run 95% of the time, is more even than coal regarding the operational flexibility. And the question is how we can get more, and that's our target, how we can get this energy anywhere. And the answer is here that if you are able to get deeper depth, it means to drill deeper for competitive price, you can totally change the map. And that was also our motivation to start innovation here, that if you look to the European map that is more than 5 kilometers deep, immediately it converts to almost something similar that you can see today in Iceland. And great on geothermal is not something crazy new. You can go to Iceland, you can visit it. So our target is, let's say, to copy paste Iceland experience with the utilization of the geothermal into the continental Europe and to able to do it. Here, for example, from perspective of Central Europe, even if you look to the Slovakia, Hungary, Croatia, Austria, you have extraordinary conditions to utilize geothermal. And here, for example, in our country, but north you are going even more. For the heating, we are using more than 50% of the energy. And the geothermal is ideal source for the heating because you do not need to make any conversion. You can directly use it. So it's very economical beneficiary also for the other potential utilization. Now I will try to be brief. What's our innovation and what we want to achieve in a technical side? You can see on the left-hand side, how does it look like today to access some reservoirs from the geothermal energy? You have to really find some anomalies that are connected with some volcanic activities, and then you have it. Our target is to be able to drill anywhere to much deeper depth with almost the same price and be able to get the same energy anywhere you decide. Could be by Berlin, by Brussels, wherever you need it, you can use it. And here, what we want to do is a transition of today's view. If you look again to these different kind of energies that are available anywhere, and also from another point of view that available anytime, it means that you can use it 24 hours per day for competitive price. Today's geothermal is very good regarding the ability to deliver energy 24 hours, but very slow and very weak to deliver in all places you need it. Is less than 5%. What is the technology shift that could be done in the next years? If you are able to decrease significantly the cost and the risk of it, you can totally switch it to the picture that it can be the solution that can fit to the energy mix and really close this gap between the need and the fossil fuels and the solar and the wind on the other hand, with this baseload possibility. What you can get it from that, if you achieve this target, is not only the heat and the electricity, you can use it for the hydrogen production, e-mobility, and then it is very widely used also for the heating, agriculture, greenhouses. You can get easily to less than 1/3 of the cost and produce the clean local agriculture products in the places when is needed. And here is the cost structure of the geothermal power plant. Typically is at least 2/3 of the costs are totally connected with the drilling, because the power plant is a more or less commodity that you can buy, is a very standard cost, but all the risk and the challenge is this in blue part is the drilling cost. And our aim was to change it. If you look, for example, perspective, what does it mean the drilling today? If you reach with this more developed oil and gas technologies, the 99% of the drilling today is for oil and gas. It means all the focus of these drilling companies is there. Is very competitive till some 3-4 kilometers, but when you reach it and you have to go deeper, then the price is exponentially exploding. Our target is to keep the cost on a linear, very low level, even you are reaching these deep depths. How we can do it? Very simple way, I will try to explain it. We are not using the mechanical approach that you see on the right hand side. That is the typical steel bit that is for 100 years known. We are using non-contact technology that is using plasma as very hot stream of the material, that we are stressing the rock, cracking it into small pieces. To make it maybe simple comparison with Star Wars, you can imagine the difference between sword from steel and sword from the plasma. That with steel you have to sharpen it, is heavy, it's complicated, but with plasma you can really cut through anything and go much deeper. Our state where we are currently, we provided already 1,000 tests in a test facility that we built in Bratislava. We also have another office in London, and we have the design center in the UK. And here our outcome is that we are already in the phase of the finalization of the prototype and preparation for the testing in the field. We already provided many tests in this high pressure, high temperature environment that is there downhole. And our target for next 2 years is to be able to go through the field testing and then to commercialize it within the pilot project. What is the plan is definitely after the ability to prove it in the field with right setup of the partners, because we are not able to bring it to life just alone as a small startup from Slovakia. So we are connecting here with bigger players, mostly utilities or the drilling equipment producers. Also regarding our achievement and partnerships, we were able to get on our side important also operators. Now, of course, COVID is not helping us too much, because not only lockdown, but also ability to realize and make the pilots or the testing project is more limited. But we are relentlessly moving forward. And this is our target. I'm just finishing my part, is that what we want to do really, it won't happen as an energy transition. It will not happen in the next 3-5 years. It is a longer timeline. But our effort is that we should bring geothermal to the light, and from now to start to increase the percentage of the geothermal, and with the first successful pilot projects in the next coming years, we can then make the scale up, and within the time frame of some 10 years, what we see as a planning of the bigger plants, really to step into retrofitting of the coal mostly as a one-to-one solution that geothermal is. And again, comparing it with the countries like Poland, for example, we just counted that retrofitting the all 6 biggest Polish power plants from the coal, it will need to drill only about 1,000 wells. What is looks like big thing, but yearly there are drilled about 60,000 wells globally. So within time frame of, I don't know, 15-20 years is very achievable thing. And you can make this transition that Poland has the biggest problems with that within 20 years. So that's maybe our ambition. And my last word is what we see and why we are doing the things that really we see the big complexity of the energy systems. And we are very convinced that geothermal could be the strong contribution to the solar and wind, really to act as a third really serious source of the energy. And mostly when we are looking to the Europe, like heating and dependency on the gas imports, the geothermal could be one of the cornerstones. So thank you, and happy then to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Igor. Lots of interesting insights. And now we actually gonna move from the energy on which we, so to say, sit, to the energy that we look up to in a way, because Mate Urfi is from Hungary and is working on the photovoltaics, which is, I think, really important element where the geothermal has application in electricity production, but the first step is really the heating. Here, the photovoltaics and the sun is primarily used for the electricity, and it's actually overtaken the I think the use for heating. So over to you, Mate. Looking forward.
Thank you very much. Let me just quickly share my presentation, which will aid me a bit. I prepared you a pretty basic one. That's all I can provide. Thank you very much for having me, Martin and Morten. I want to also thank you for the supporting staff of this event. I know that there's a lot of people working behind the scenes to make this happen. And so today I want to share my views on the current state of the PV market, and I want to answer some basic questions about how I see the future of this technology in Central and Eastern Europe. So this year has been a special year, and we've all seen how life slowed down, and that was beautifully reflected in the drop of demand in almost all of the energy sources. And what I really like about this chart you see in front of you is that there's a tiny bit of exemption, and that is two main renewable sources, that is wind and solar. And they are just growing. But this is a global data. This is something that works on a global scale. And we see all these global charts everywhere. So the question still stands whether this is actually the golden age for solar power for us here in Central and Eastern Europe. Now, I'm from Hungary, and in Hungary, it should be the golden age for PV. First of all, we do have an attractive number of sunny hours, and also for some ununderstandable reason, wind power is basically banned here in Hungary. It's been banned for over 10 years now. If it's renewable, it's basically PV here. And before I go anywhere forward, I want to give a little introduction on the structure of PV investments, because as Mr. Van Steen pointed out, we need investments. And so if we want to have them, we need to understand the nature of them and what drives investors. If you are familiar with how PV investments are structured, you might as well take a coffee break for the next 2 minutes. But for the rest of you, it's pretty easy, whether it's on your rooftop or it covers hundreds of hectares of land. There is one initial capital investment all investors have to make. And after that, you're set. Your produced energy is very predictable, but you hardly can change it. Your operation costs are incredibly low, so there's very little wiggle room if you want to grow your profit by making your expenses lower, because there's not much. I mean, you cut the grass, you check the cabling every now and then, but that's pretty much it. So there's only one thing after the capital investment that is not stable, and that is how much money you get for the electricity you produce. And if investors don't have a clear vision, a clear path of the future of their investment in terms of how much money they get for the produced electricity, they will not invest. So states in the past 2 decades started to introduce certain schemes. The most popular was the FIT scheme, or feed-in tariff scheme, where basically states provided a state guaranteed price for taking over the produced electricity. Well, this was pretty sweet. I mean, as long as investors managed to keep their initial expenses under a certain level, then they could be absolutely sure that their return will stay within the margins that they intend them to stay. But actually, this was a too sweet of a deal. So most of the countries started to phase this out in the past decade and started to replace these guaranteed takeover prices with auctions, where investors had to bid and still have to bid in many of the countries, including Hungary. So they have to place their bids for the lowest price they are still okay to get for their produced electricity. Now, obviously, this is still pretty nice because then for the winners, the state guarantees this price to be paid for their energy. But as Mr. Van Steen also pointed out, the grid capacities are very limited. And so, for example, in Hungary, in the latest auction, out of 200 bidders, I read 200 bidders for power plants over 1 megawatt of capacity, only 7 got granted the opportunity to get state guaranteed takeover price. So 193 have to look for other options. While this other option may be merchant pricing, which is pretty tricky, because who can tell how much will be the price for electricity in 10 years from now? This may be much higher, especially in Hungary, where we have to have higher electricity prices because we are building a new nuclear plant going against the trends. But globally speaking, we are anticipating lower prices. So it's still a very risky investment. So the other way policy can affect PV investments is to make the capital expenditure lower. Now, the trends are pretty clear. As you can see on the right, it's not a linear chart, it's exponential. So over the past decades, prices have really dramatically dropped. in line with production capacities growing dramatically. And this is really good in terms of excluding state support in the operation of PV investments. But of course, there are still some obstacles. The European Union still has and used to have even more anti-dumping tariffs imposed on, well, mostly Chinese or Eastern Asian producers, one of which has been lifted in the late months of 2018. And when that anti-dumping tariff was lifted in 2018, the prices dropped by over 30% for PV panels. So since that's the biggest part of PV investments, it has to be clear for everyone that if we want to see more solar panels all around us, then my approach would be not to make these investments more dependent on government support, but more attractive as a standalone investment. Of course, I have to mention that since some of these investments are already pretty attractive as they are, many people just stay off grid and build a power plant to support their own power plant or production facility. These we call off-grid systems. Now, to underline what I just said, I want to show you some graphs. I hope you see them because the lines are pretty thin. So these are 4 countries that used to have these feed-in tariffs, and all of them discontinued this feed-in tariff scheme at one point. And it doesn't really matter when they discontinued these regulations, these FIT schemes, whether it was 10 years ago or 4 years ago. The trend is pretty clear. Solar PV investments basically ceased to continue. And even though there are some auctions or other ways to incentivize these investments, investors are not interested. And we have to keep that in mind. Hungary, if you check it, discontinued its FIT scheme from 2017, but the power purchase agreements are still in place, so the line is still going up. But in about a year or two, this trend will stop if things stay the way they are, because we no longer have the FIT scheme, we have auctions, and as you just heard, all those granted capacities are incredibly low, especially compared to what we used to have. And there's a lot of space to grow. What you see in front of you now is how much electricity renewable sources generate in certain countries. And while in Hungary, the share of PV is pretty good, but when we speak in terms of Central and Eastern Europe, solar PV is nowhere near its potential capacity. Of course, there's a glass ceiling for all renewable sources except for, well, probably geothermal, as we heard. But there's a glass ceiling for all these non-baseload renewable energy sources, and that's getting higher and higher because the demand is also growing for electricity. So we don't have to be afraid to let PV investments go. And so it can be the golden age if we make it the golden age. And there are good numbers that support the possibility of the next decade becoming the decade where many rooftops and many parking lots and some probably some agricultural fields as well here and there will be covered in PV panels, because even though we are not at the point where we used to be at 2011, when mostly driven by Germany and Italy, the capacities were huge. But if you look at this chart and you look at the latest year, you see that there is a lot more color than a decade ago, because there are a lot more countries trying to enter into the solar field. And this is good. This is good news. This is promising news. But this trend will not continue unless we let it continue with certain incentives. And if we don't keep up the pace, then things will actually get worse. Because even though, if you look at this, in Hungary, PV capacities are growing, the share of the electricity they produce in terms of the share of final consumption is dropping because people are using more and more electricity. So there's a lot to work, and I think it's not so hard to understand what we should do. First, we should make it easier to build PV plants. We have to deregulate. We should lower tariffs so that the initial investment becomes cheaper. And the less the government is involved in the capital expenditure, and the more it is involved in making space for the produced energy by improving the grid, then the better it is going to be for everyone. And of course, this is not the only source of energy we should work on. And as a Hungarian living in Hungary, I should highlight that even though I work in the PV sector, I will grab all the opportunities to say that we not only need PV, we need wind, we need hydro, we need geothermal, we need all the other renewable sources, because that's the beauty of this new age of producing energy. It's that it's diverse and there's not only one answer. Thank you very much for your attention.
Köszönöm, Mate. That was my attempt at Hungarian, but I have to apologize. My Hungarian is really not good. A couple of nice things and a couple of swear words.
Okay.
But it's really interesting to hear from you about the challenges. And I would add one specific, and I really wonder how it is looking like in Hungary on this, which is related to really the home users kind of. And I think this is a great underestimated potential, is people putting photovoltaics simply on their roofs. And having friends in Slovakia who have done it, one of the things they were complaining was actually not about the capital costs. Yeah, they're going down. It's becoming more and more affordable. Even banks are ready to lend a loan for it. It's the insane ongoing bureaucracy, the bureaucracy to install it and connect it, but the bureaucracy every year, down to the certifying, to the customs that this energy was produced in Slovakia on your rooftop. So I think this is a massive, massive challenge and a great opportunity for the Commission to push in the national reform and recovery plans, that this is something which is streamlined and that it's democratized, as I call it, that people can produce their own energy, can become entrepreneurs, so to say, and make money and help to save the planet. I think it's a great combination. Now, we have still a few minutes. I'm kind of trying to balance the Q&A because we have already some questions, and I just want to have a few questions to the panelists. I'm gonna, those of you who wrote the questions primarily or to me or to Morten, please bear with us. We're trying to find a way how to answer them. I just want to first start with the questions to the keynote speakers. And one important is one very interesting from Sanjeev Kumar, which is directed to Hans van der Steen, is about financing of the energy infrastructure for renewable heating and cooling in district heating system. And for me, this is very important issue as well, because it can help decarbonize the Central Europe, and the district heating is something which is widely spread in our region, also in Germany actually. And whether this is something where you would consider to modify the 10E framework also to help to finance these investments.
Thank you for that question. And indeed, it is a really important point. Heating and cooling is one area where renewables are lagging behind, also compared to what member states themselves set out to do when they did their initial plans. The trajectories are not being followed. We are falling behind. And the only reason that we are meeting our 20% target in the EU as a whole is because we are overachieving on electricity. And then we're also helped a little bit by the COVID crisis, because this is a share of energy compared to share of renewable energy is compared to overall energy consumption. And of course, if the overall energy consumption goes down, as it has done in recent months, then then we will probably be more able to meet our target. So heating and cooling is important. It is a target area for our revision of the Renewable Energy Directive. We are hoping we can come up with some good additional incentives to try and bring more renewables into heating and cooling. And any good ideas that are out there, I make a little commercial break here if I may, please come forward with them in the public consultations. We are really in a very much a listening mode, so we want to consider all good ideas there. The specific question about financing, I think first of all, the opportunities that I mentioned related to the recovery funding, which is available, Next Generation EU, and other ways of bringing us forward in the current pandemic, is also something that can be considered for district heating and cooling networks. We think it's a very sensible type of investment in this, and it's something that member states should consider. We've said that also very clearly with the renovation wave, because there we are not just looking at renovating, so to say, the individual house, but also the, so to say, built environment and the cities aspect. And of course, this is where district heating is a real option. And I think in a Central European context, it's important because there's already a lot to build on. But I think most people will agree if I also say that in many of the Central and Eastern European countries, there's a need to renovate and improve the network for that. So I think there's a real opportunity here. And of course, district heating has the very clear advantage of being very versatile and flexible when it comes to fuels. So even district heating that has been perhaps designed for, shall we say, transporting heat based on fossil fuels, gas, or even worse, coal, can be used also for renewables. Of course, it requires a conversion of the source for the heating, and we think that is something that could be done. Now, whether or not this will come into the reviewed 10E regulation, I can't really say, because we're at the very last stages of finalizing that proposal. It will hopefully come out before Christmas. That is certainly the idea. Colleagues are working full speed on that, so I don't want to speculate on that. The issue there is, of course, that particular program was meant to be looking specifically at cross-border issues. So it even follows from the title Trans-European Net. So it doesn't fit in immediately, but that is not to say that we haven't looked at it, and we still are. But whether or not it will be in, I think we will have to wait and see another few days or weeks. I'll leave it there, but good question. Thank
you very much. And it's important what you mentioned about the variability of district heating, because indeed this is a great potential. And just to give you one example on what I think needs to happen also in terms of prioritization and cleanup of the various support schemes, is what I keep on repeating is there is a geothermal source outside of the capital of Eastern Slovakia that's been drilled with FARE pre-accession funds in 90s. And it can basically heat without the added energy efficiency, a third of that town, which is a couple 100,000 people. The town is still being heated by coal, and the modernization is planned to change it to gas, Russian gas, obviously. And I think this is where I think it's really crucial to follow the hierarchy. Let's do efficiency, then renewables, and only then try to see if there is any transition and not allow any public funding to go in a contradiction of that. Now, there is one more, I think it's connected to that. I'm going to just hopefully not cut much into the panel, but I think it's important because it's also in Central Europe a very hot topic, and it's biomass. Especially, it's from Zoltán Kun, and I'm sorry again to you, Hans, about the role of the forest-based biomass. I'm sure, I hope that Juraj Zamkovský will touch upon it a bit, but the question is, what is the role of it? And I'll just add it, how do you see the Commission coming up with sustainability criteria for the biomass? Because for me, as with everything, it can be really good and it can be really bad in terms of the environmental impact. It's not really sustainable if we just chop down the forest to burn them and pretend this is renewable energy. But there is also great potential in the biomass. So where do you see its roles and ecological limits?
Thank you. That is another important and very, very big question, I would say, because already today, in fact, the share of bioenergy in the overall renewable share is very big. It's around half for the EU as a whole. So, I mean, many people, when they think renewables, they think about solar panels or wind turbines, but in reality, there is a lot of bioenergy in there already. And of course, as the person asking the question is saying, sustainability of the biomass that we use here is absolutely essential. And that's why we have from the very beginning had strict sustainability criteria to start with for the liquid bioenergy, so biofuels, but with the RED II extended into the solid biomass that is used, for example, for electricity or heat generation. So we do actually have sustainability criteria that member states are now busy putting into national legislation, hopefully. And that is, I think, very good. Now, the question is, of course, as we move forward and we further strengthen our ambition on renewable energy, are we also in need of additional criteria for bioenergy? And that will be part of the impact assessment that we will conduct in the run-up to the new proposals by June of next year. We will look at whether or not there's a need for that. We had the discussion inside the Commission also with the biodiversity strategy that came out from the Commission some months ago. And indeed, it is a very, very sensitive issue because the science is not, shall we say, fully in agreement with itself. I mean, you will find scientists who say that biomass more or less altogether is a very bad thing to do. And then there are others who say, no, it does actually make a big contribution towards fighting climate change, provided it is the right type of biomass, that it is sourced in a sustainable way, comes from sustainably driven forests and so on and so forth. And that, of course, is where the Commission needs to look into all of that. And that's another big task for the spring, I think. So yes, it is on our radar very much. And I think we need to accept that biomass will play a role also as we move forward. The big question is to what extent it will contribute to the overall climate change fight. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. And let me move to our panel where we have really interesting lineup of speakers. And we'll start with Julian Popov, a fellow from European Climate Foundation and the chairman of the Business Performance Institute Europe, a former Minister of Environment of Bulgaria, and someone who works on the energy efficiency of buildings. I think this is going to be really interesting. So over to you, Mr. Popov.
Thank you. Thank you very much for putting together also this excellent conference in a time that we really need to accelerate very much the discussion about the energy transition. And one thing that I would like to focus is the fact that we somehow ignore the East European part of Europe when it comes to policies and also the contribution of the clean energy. And that's understandable because it's we tend to be abstractive about all sorts of things. So when it comes to higher targets in renewables, higher targets in energy efficiency, our attitude tends to be, no, thank you, we prefer to be more modest. And if we overachieve that, that's fine, but otherwise lower targets are better. And I think that's how, that's where we get it quite wrong, because the potential of for renewable energy in Eastern Europe is absolutely vast. I remember in 2017, so that's 3-4 years ago, based on data which is probably 4 or 5 years old now, IRENA came up with a very good study then, assessing the renewable potential, the technical and the cost competitive renewable potential of Southeast Europe, only Southeast Europe, excluding Greece, but including Ukraine. And the conclusion was that the technical potential was around 740 gigawatts. And at that time, IRENA suggested that 125 gigawatts is cost competitive potential. And cost competitive is defined as renewable energy that can produce electricity at a cost lower than gas, for instance, or the conventional systems. Now, if we do the same study, we can be sure that this 125 will be at least doubled because of a reduction of cost of renewables and at the same time lower interest rates. And the other thing is that this study and other studies also don't take into account some very, very promising sources. One source is the potential of the co-regions for generating renewables. And JRC did a study on the solar potential of co-regions in transition in Europe. And the conclusion was that the co-regions can produce the same amount of electricity, has the same technical potential to produce the same amount of electricity as coal is producing now. So obviously that is not the recommended scenario to replace one-to-one coal with solar, but that shows what is the technical potential of solar on co-regions. And co-regions are fantastically interesting because they have land that is owned by the state and operated usually by one entity. So it's very easy to be transformed into a good project, but also in co-regions, the grid is very strong. So it's because this is the place where the big power plants are. And the other area which is not was not included in this study and other studies, and is coming out now as a very promising area, is the offshore wind. And we always ignore the offshore wind in the Black Sea, but there is a good quality wind there. There is a very good quality of wind in the Baltic Sea, in the Adriatic. And if we combine this potential that was kind of traditionally defined by IRENA 5 years ago, we add the co-regions, we add the offshore potential. I mean, Eastern Europe can make enormous contribution to the clean energy goals and climate goals. And that in most cases, I mean, clearly with offshore wind is a bit more complicated at the moment, but in most cases that does not need any subsidies, because the electricity that is produced nowadays with new installations has lower price, lower cost. But if I have to sort of conclude what I think we should do to release this massive potential, is first of all we have to focus our attention on that potential, both in the East, in the West, in Brussels, in Berlin, in all these power places around Europe. Then we need to completely rethink the old concepts of electricity networks, especially for offshore wind. Clearly, we have to redraw the grid infrastructure, and then of course we have to think more about the hydro energy and the hydro storage, which is usually not discussed simply because Germany and UK, the leading countries, don't have that much as, let's say, Romania or Southeast Europe, which has huge hydro potential and huge hydro storage potential, and that this hydro storage potential can release massive development of cost competitive renewables. And finally, we need to think about larger regions. And when we talk about larger regions, we must include in our thinking and in our planning countries that are outside the EU, the Western Balkans, Turkey, and Ukraine. I mean, these are countries that are actually part of our energy system, but we ignore them for political reasons, for administrative reasons, bureaucratic reasons. It's outside the European Union. But bringing the clean energy potential from these countries could make a huge difference. I'll stop here, and if there are any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. I want to have the questions at the end, because that kind of one can see the different points of view and allow us to have a hopefully sufficient Q&A session, but it's never long enough. But I just want to know the last thing that you said, that we keep on forgetting. We talk about the Eastern Partnership, and there is a lot about the hydrocarbons historically there. You know, it's the Azerbaijani oil and gas, let's be honest. But we kept on forgetting about the renewable potential from these countries. And I think here, especially Ukraine, needs to be a strategic partner for us in Europe. And this can help also to bolster security to the point where, the Nord Stream 2 will be actually obsolete and stranded investment. And I think that's, it is, yeah.
And Ukraine has huge onshore and offshore wind potential. The only thing you need the wire to get it from there to Central Europe. But that will require rethinking of our existing grid plans and grid infrastructure.
And that's one of the, I think, the trans-European energy networks that we really need to build up, and more pipes. Thank you very much. And I'd like to move to the next speaker, which is Antonín Fejar from the Czech Academy of Sciences. I think Mr. Lednický, Mr. Fejar will be presenting, but Mr. Lednický is also available here for questions. So I'm looking forward to the view from Czech Republic.
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen with the presentation. Should be here. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. Yes. So I would like to point out another aspect of the solar energy. In this case, the fact that we have the perspective of using solar energy a lot in Europe, but we actually import almost all of the solar cells from China. Not that China is not installing there as well, but this dependency on China is something which is quite strange, in fact, if we want to base our energy system on this. Let me also point out the picture which I'm showing here, how the solar systems can be pervading everywhere. The picture is from Prague, if you recognize the place. So this is from the roof of the National Theatre, and we are actually looking on the roof of another building of the National Theatre. This is the new scene of the National Theatre right in the center in Prague. And in this case, it was US produced solar cells, but you would not buy them anymore because the company there went bankrupt, just like most of the European companies producing solar cells. And I want to point out what could be done about that. And I will refer to the Horizon 2020 project called NextBase, which ended last year in September, which was composed of partners you can see here, and which was doing really well in sense that we have achieved efficiencies which were close to the world record at the end of the project. And we did not get to the world record. This is still held by the by the Japanese company Kaneka, but the record is done by cells which cannot be mass produced, while the main focus of this European project was developing a process almost as good as a world record, but which could be produced on a mass scale, adding an economic competitivity to the process. And this is indeed going on in some sense. So there's a prototype production which started in September 2019 by Enel Green Power in Catania with annual production of about 200 megawatts. And also in September last year, there was an announcement of another partner in the project, the Swiss company Meyer Burger, that they are starting a production facility in Germany, which should reach perhaps a capacity of about 5 gigawatts within 3 to 5 years. And that would already be quite sizable. Now, let me explain just a little bit why this is giving a competitive edge to European partners there. The structure of the cell is complicated in the sense that it's contacted only from the back side with a very tiny contacts. So there is no shading on the front side, and that's the way how you can achieve high efficiency. But that also is a challenge how to produce them. And in our project, our role was an optical profilometry, which was able to check the contacts. Here, Martin Ledinsky is demonstrating a prototype of our device, which presently now is in the form of a little device like this, which in fact, if the production would start, could be produced in an unknown number of installations, and that would be quite nice. So this would be our small contribution to the renewable energies from here. Now, the potential for the solar energy is, of course, huge, even so it may not be sufficient for the goals as mentioned by Mr. Van Steen at the beginning. We are looking to the production which may lead to the global solar capacity increasing from 180 gigawatts in 2018 to over 8 terawatts by 2050, but we should go even faster. This would be covering about 25% of global power, and we are now talking about going even to higher. It may not always be smooth going, and for illustrating the case, I will use a cartoon from the newspapers here. The cartoon is in Czech, but the translation is, "Oh Lord, please help this country and send a terrible destructive hailstorm." This is an expression of the popular opinion about photovoltaics in the Czech Republic, which is still pervading, because we have been installing so fast that within less than 2 years, we nearly reached the same level of installations as in Germany, and it's still being discussed if it was good or not. And one of the consequences is that the installations were stopped completely, as you could also see from the picture of Mate Urfi. There was a ceiling, not a glass ceiling, but a very technical ceiling for not allowing any more installations there. And we are still having to deal with the shock coming out of there. From my point, this would be the description of the role of PV, how to bring it back, and how to tap into this extreme potential for energy, which is coming from the biggest nuclear reactor, which is our sun. Thank you for your attention. I don't want to say more. I have a vision for the future, perhaps, but I don't want to take more space in the discussion now, so I will save it for now.
Thank you very much. And yes, indeed, sadly, it's not only in Czech Republic, but also in Slovakia, there is been a certain backlash against the photovoltaics after the, let's be honest, not always the most transparent process of giving the support to certain selected friends, let's say, in the kind of the round of fixed buying prices in late 2000s. But this is something which really needs to change. Also the way where and how we put the photovoltaics. And I think this is really about more use of brownfields, more use of rooftop photovoltaics, and really democratizing the whole process. Now, the next speaker, we stay in Czech Republic, is Kristina Šapová, who is a lawyer and head of responsible energy section in a Frank Bold society. Because, yeah, I have to say I like the name because they are both Frank and Bold, and it sounds better than ekologický právní service. So over to you, Kristina.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Is the sound all right?
Yes.
Perfect. So let me share my screen. So hopefully you can see a few slides, and these are kind of slides of the elementary school level of the PowerPoint. So bear with me, and hopefully it will be illustrative. So my perspective and the issue I would like to share with you today is more, let's say, policy and regulatory oriented compared to the technical potential. However, these issues go hand in hand. So hopefully after the webinar today, the participants would have a broader picture. So the keynote I would like to make is about the potential of the community power in the Central and Eastern Europe region. What I mean by the community energy or community power is a wide range of the projects that refer to the collective energy actions by number of participants and that foster citizens' participation in the energy market. The clean energy package, so the clean energy for all Europeans, confirms the prominent role of prosumers. So the persons or the entities that are both producing and consuming their own renewable energy. When speaking about the energy communities or the energy power, I like to start with the map of the potential, where you can clearly see the divide between the eastern and the western part of Europe. However, seeing the numbers, the central and eastern region is still very I would say interesting or has a huge potential that is there to be unfolded. Well, what I should have mentioned at the beginning, I'm a Slovak national living in the Czech Republic and working with a team of lawyers in Czech Republic and Poland. So my perspective is really, let's say, a Central European one. I do not wish to speak much about Western Europe and the examples and the credibility of the community energy there. However, I cannot help myself to show the German graphs simply to illustrate the potential and mostly about the shareholders or about the divide of the investors and holders of the energy sector. So as you can see in 2012, within all renewables installed in German market, almost 34% were owned by the energy communities in some form. In 2016, this was already 42%, and the number is still growing. So what are some common denominators or some common defining points of the energy community projects? So it's the wide participation, it's the generation of the social and environmental benefits. So it's not pure business, but it provides some public services and let's say aiming for the public good. And lastly, and for me personally, the most important point is that these forms are to help us to accelerate the energy transition. So when we are speaking about the transition of the Central European, heavily fossil-based energy systems towards the renewables and net zero energy systems, we need to look on all potentials and all forms of the renewables and the smart solutions that we can have. And the energy communities or the community power are the one of the forms that is there and waiting to be explored, I believe. So what does it stand for? It covers a wide range of activities, forms, technologies, organizational or legal structures. I do not wish to go into the details. You are looking at the services from generation, distribution, energy efficiency, electromobility, and other services. When you are looking at the technologies, it's not only wind and solar, it's also biogas, small hydropower plants, and other forms that are there to come. I'm a lawyer, but I would leave you. I would leave behind the legal and structural or organizational forms. And when we speak at this, when we look at the scale or the size of such entities, it really can be 2 or 3 entities up to thousands of the participants in the energy community project somewhere in Austria or in Germany currently. The motivation why the entities are exploring or are entering the energy communities differ also widely. But speaking from the Central European perspective, I believe it's the affordability and the savings, so the monetary benefits, as well as some environmental and climate-oriented concerns. So what are the major opportunities and barriers for a large-scale exploration of these concepts? As for all renewable energy projects, it is, from my perspective, having a stable legal and regulatory framework, so having the predictable environment where you as the investor or a project promoter can operate. And secondly, it's some kind of an incentive that you would get or that you can get as a support to explore and start your own project. So with the Clean Energy Package and the Renewables Directive and the Common Electricity Directive, this is the first time when the energy communities are defined. So the European Union has a common, strong framework that is waiting there to be transposed. The deadlines are coming soon. One is the end of this year, so end of 2020. The second one is mid of 2021. Unfortunately, as far as I am concerned, most of the member states especially from the region we are talking about today, are lagging behind, and they will be missing the deadlines. So for instance, in the Czech Republic, we are looking at the time frame of 2022, 2023. So this is definitely one of the barriers, and as well as the opportunities if the member states will jump on this opportunity and align their national laws with the EU directives as fast as possible. And secondly, it would be the content that would be decisive, and that would be essential for the successful development of the energy communities. As these are the new market players and the new entities on the energy market, it would need to be very carefully and diligently crafted to allow their potential to be unfolded, as well as not to create any chaos or problems for the overall organization of the energy market. So when it comes to the incentive schemes, we have heard briefly about different forms and their history in the previous notes. For the energy community, similar to other projects in renewable energy, it could be feed-in tariffs, tax-intensive, different kind of grants, and other form of subsidies. For this, and a specific momentum that is upcoming is the revision of the state aid guidelines for the environmental and energy sector. So the current guidelines from 2014 are to be expired this year, and the revision is upcoming in 2021. I believe that it would be necessary to reflect different forms and specifics of renewable energy projects with the energy communities projects included. The second milestone or the major opportunity, window of opportunity that is there are various tools coming from the EU currently, not only as the response to COVID-19 crisis, but also as the overall policy developments. So what I would like to highlight is the Modernization Fund as a very specific tool that is there available for 10 member states that have a lower income compared to the rest of the Europe. It is up to the member states to decide where they would like to direct their investments. The major areas of interest are renewables, energy efficiency, just transition in coal-dependent regions, and others. What I would like to see as the opportunity and not as the threat is that the electricity generators in the CEE region were eligible for the similar funds in the past, and this was the so-called 10C derogation from the EU ETS directive. And the European Court of Auditors recently published a report that was showing that the free allocation of the allowances, so the additional financial support for the electricity generators in the CEE region, are to be better targeted. So the major beneficiaries were Poland, Czechia, Romania, and Bulgaria. And the European auditors found that the power sectors in these countries were significantly slower in progress in decarbonization compared to the countries and the member states that were not provided with the additional funds for their energy transition. So I'm very hopeful that with the Modernization Fund, the member states would learn from this experience and would direct the additional financial sources through decarbonization and decentralization of their energy portfolios. To finish with some silver lining, I would like really to share a positive example from Poland, where it does not concern the energy communities, but it concerns prosumers, so the individuals that are households and single entities that are producing their own power and that are consuming it. And there has been, for me, incredible increase in micro installations of the photovoltaics with a really simple tool. This is called My Electricity Program. It started last year. And over 2018, around 350 megawatt in photovoltaics were installed, while in 2019 it was already 900 megawatt. And it is said that over 1,000 interested participants are coming daily. It is expected that this scheme will be prolonged, that the additional sources will be directed to it. And I would like to see similar schemes and similar good examples or good practices for the community power elsewhere, as well as in Poland in the upcoming years. So what I would like to finish with is really the notion of the upcoming year that will bring both opportunity, well, hopefully mostly opportunities, both from the setting the new legal structures and regulatory framework for the community energy and renewables and all other new actors on the energy market due to the EU legislation. And secondly, that the funds that are available currently from the EU sources will be used towards fast and wide deployment of the clean energy sources. Many thanks.
Thank you so much, Christina. I'm jumping in here, and I hope you can see me all. Martin was is just running to ask a question in one of the other committees. He'll be right back. So I'm just taking the floor to facilitate further. Great points that you are making, Christina. And one of the things that I took note of was the need for stable regulatory conditions, and I can just add that also in my own country we've had a stop-go policy on some of these issues, leading to a lot of confusion with the prosumers or consumers or citizens on what to do. So I think the point that you're making on stable conditions is absolutely vital and crucial if this is to pick up speed even further. Thank you so much for your remarks. We'll move on to Jan Palaszczak. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. If not, please correct me. CEO of Amber Holding and founder of a project that you can explain more about. Please, Jan Palaszczak, are you with us? You have the floor, please.
Good afternoon. Thanks for invitation. I will try to share a few slides. And that is this. Fine. Can you see the slides?
Yes, they're coming through fine, and we can see and hear you. All is good. Thank you. Please.
Great. I will not present the new project COIN, focusing on a carbon market and carbon credits and new virtual currency, let's say. I will focus on renewables because that's on the agenda, and so I will use my experiences with renewables, and I can start with some general vision or mission that we have. So how to reduce carbon footprint, because everybody is committing. European Commission is committed, countries are committed, cities are committed, in Czech Republic, Prague, Brno, and corporations are committing to be carbon neutral, carbon zero in 2050. China is adding, US probably will go back to Paris now. And so just from our point of view in Ampere, we are trying to think about this in complexity as well from our business point of view. And everybody is committing, but sometimes I'm missing appropriate tools there. So we are trying to cut some part of carbon footprint of corporations or municipalities with energy savings. That's where you shall always start, and you can cut something like 20 or 30% of energy consumption of enterprises or cities with energy management and energy performance contracting and these energy savings projects. But still, there is a lot of energy consumption, and that means carbon footprint left. And you can go on with renewables on the roofs and on site where you consume the energy. But if you are not Google or Apple, there is still something left, some carbon footprint, and there are offsets, carbon offsets. That means green certificates, different vouchers, and so. And that's a coin as some kind of financial offsets using EU ETS systems as underlying asset under new virtual currency. But today it's about renewables. So I have started this renewables in 2008 in Czech Republic. As Mr. Hojsík mentioned, there was a big issue with renewables in Czech Republic, and Slovakia was a little bit similar in 2010, and that was the start for me to think about how to get the electricity from renewables to the market. So that's why we have established in 2011 Ampere Market, electricity trading company, focusing on purchase from independent producers, primarily renewables, and selling this electricity to end customers. And we were developing commercial virtual power plant. I have borrowed this picture from ABB, so thank you, because I like it as the most similar to what we have developed in Ampere. And virtual power plant, that's for me still the best concept of how to get more renewables into grid, into market, and how to help grow energy communities. So we were purchasing electricity from wind farms, from solar power plants, from hydro power plants, and from biomass power plants and biogas stations. And we were mixing this onto some predictable load. And as the first point, if you combine more resources and more kinds of resources, you get more stable load. So That's first point. As second, we were using meteorology services, and that was base ground for Ampere Meteor as a provider of forecast services all around Europe. And as the third, when you have some statistics on your side, you have meteor prediction on your side, you still need to help with some resources where you can change the load. So there were some heating systems with combined heating and electricity generation, and these were used for raising the output when it was necessary. So this is our experience with virtual power plant. We are managing somewhat 150 megawatts of output, and sold more than 500 gigawatt hours per year from independent resources and producers. And it was working. It was working in Czech Republic, and still it is working. And it was and is working under law as it is before the new law coming. And because the new law is here coming, so I would like to add my point of view that don't fear the word market. Yes, I think market and communities are not contradictions or opposites, because market was already a place where people meet. So it's not something citizens or communities shall fear. And always I say, as one of my teachers, chess master and chess representation trainer, teach me simple rules bring complex results. So I would like if the new law will be a simple one, and brings not contradictions and incentives for the subjects under the law. Because sometimes there is, from my point of view, too much tools, which if are not contradictory, so are less efficient than they could be. There are some penalties. There are some exceptions of penalties. There are some subsidies, but not for everybody always. And so that's why we need to keep some space for the market conditions, and that's why I would like to keep it simple, please, because I think energy communities will grow well when we bring them fair conditions. That means fair access to grid, fair price of distribution and transmission, fair balancing costs, and fair price of carbon emissions. And from my point of view, this shall apply for every subjects on the market, and as well as in the cross-border transfers of energy. So please keep it simple, and it will be work. And there are communities of people. There will be for sure energy communities, and there will be more virtual power plants also, I think, and more renewables as well. So that's it from my point of view.
Thank you very much. It's been really interesting balance, I think, between the kind of physical and virtual communities. And this is something where I really like the approach of bringing people together to make this green transition. This is really not about just some big companies needing to do that, but how we can make it into a just transition that is with people and for the people. But not only, and I think this is something very often is what is forgotten, are the rural communities, are the communities outside of these big cities, which seem to be somehow, on the edge of the attention. And that's where Juraj Zankovský comes in, and his work on the regional energy planning and the regional project is for me something really, really inspiring, because it brings together not only the energy transition, but it brings into the play the local and regional development, often in the most marginalized of regions and communities. So it's really a pleasure to have you here. And over to you, Rai.
Thank you very much. Let me share the screen. Okay, here it is. I hope you see it. Okay. So my topic is regional energy policy and regional energy planning and coordination as a condition for achieving carbon neutrality. This graph shows greenhouse gas reduction targets of Slovakia made before Slovakia adopted the goal of carbon neutrality by 2050. It is taken from low carbon strategy of the Slovak Republic until 2030 with a view to 2050. It was made in last year, and at that time when this was published, it was among the public administration, it was taken as a very radical plan and very ambitious plan, technically and financially, of course. When Slovakia joined the EU in this most ambitious plan to achieve carbon neutrality in 30 years, it became clear that we will have even we will make this. We will have to change these targets and make it even stricter, which will of course require adoption of a lot of additional measures and funding, public funding, and I think that there are a lot of people in administration or also outside administration who doubt if we are able to achieve this goal. And one of my explanation why these doubts are very realistically based is that we do not have any regional energy and climate policies. We do not have any regional capacities dealing with energy planning, with energy coordination. We do not have any system below the state level how to transpose this extraordinarily large and big target and goal to the real practice in local, regional, sub-regional levels. We have, so let me introduce this regional perspective in the Slovak Republic. We suffer from very low climate awareness in general, not only public officials, but also general public and even educated people. As I said, there is no regional energy policy. There are no capacities for such policies. So basically, even if there are some attempts to adopt some regional policy to shape and coordinate sane development of the energy sector in a broader sense, not just energy, but also including transport and other sectors, there are no capacities to implement such policies. Even if there were such capacities, they would have no available methodologies how to work. There is no standard way of planning. And in such a situation, subsidies create and represent major motivator for any energy project development on local levels. So if there are subsidies, there are projects. If there are no subsidies, there are no projects. So the development is very chaotic and very spontaneous. And because of the fact that subsidies are set up often very poorly, this results also in a very poor results of the supported projects. So we have to take this into mind also when we speak about renewables and how to use renewables in practice. The result is clear. We have huge energy demand, and we do not have any system how to decline this huge energy demand. Our calculations from several pilot regions, rural regions where we work, show that in sector of buildings we consume 4 times more energy than we would otherwise use if the energy needs are optimized. And the situation is very similar also in other regions in the country. So we can easily say that Slovakia consumes in building sector 4 times bigger amount of energy as the country with optimized energy needs. This is I think basic issue we should realize when we talk about renewables. We cannot simply replace one fossil energy source by renewable if we don't significantly decline the energy need. Therefore, a couple of years ago, we started to pilot so-called sustainable energy centers in 3 economically marginalized regions. We were lucky because a couple of years ago, the government adopted a new public policy to support lagging regions, economically marginalized regions with high level of unemployment. And we convinced these 3 regions, which you can see on the map, to start to build some infrastructure which would in future deal with energy on regional level in a systemic way. These energy centers started to develop pilot low carbon strategies. They tested new methodologies, and we assume that these methodologies can become a basis for standardized methodologies which will be used in Slovakia in the future when we establish such regional capacities for energy sector. So right now we are completing these pilot strategies, and we will evaluate the mistakes, experiences, challenges in early next year. And I hope that this will be very valuable input for the state and for the regional actors in shaping and designing the future regional energy planning system in Slovakia. I will skip a couple of slides, but let me stop in this. We not only try to calculate how much emissions are emitted from the energy sector from these regions, how much energy they consume, but we translate these figures into the language of money, and we see that the leakage of money through imports of energy and fuels to these regions, and these imports represent mostly fossil energy sources, is very, very high. In 2017, in one region in southern Slovakia, represent 800 euro per capita per year. So if you count this by the number of population, it's huge money. And if this money are circulating in the local economy through the utilization of local renewables, then there are a lot of money for internal development of these regions, and this is the language the region now listen to, and they understand this kind of language. So what we proposed the whole system of the new planning infrastructure. We design it for the regional level, for the sub-regional level, and for the level of local municipalities, so cities and villages. And we agreed with the Ministry of Economy, which is competent for energy sector, that this kind of infrastructure will start to be built, and that the new European money for recovery and also from EU funds will be partially used for starting such an infrastructure. This is, I don't want to read it in details. You can see it and you can get it. But I really think that without the real capacities in the regions, we will not be able to transpose the national target, climate target to the reality. And also, I worry that without this such capacities, we will not be able also to spend wisely the money for energy transition at all. So basically, there are in front of us there are a lot of challenges, of course, because we are talking about the new infrastructure, about the new administration, and we will have to do a lot of things. First of all, we will have to achieve the consensus among key stakeholders in the regions on the proper administrative structure. We need to clearly divide the tasks and responsibilities among these different levels. We need to develop really standardized methodologies for these new regional sustainable energy centers. We also have to prepare before the establishment of the center professional capacities. We are missing that. So we start to talk to universities, to technical schools in the regions to get involved in this process. We will also have to ensure the continuous education of the professionals of these new units after they will be established. So there are a lot of tasks, but I think that this challenge should be taken seriously, and we will really have to, if we are talking about carbon neutrality within 3 decades, we need to start immediately with that. I will stop here, and maybe if there are some questions I can respond. Maybe one last thing, Martin, you mentioned the need for regulation of the use of biomass, for example. In the regions, this is a very significant problem in Slovakia. We installed a lot of power plants, heating plants for cities all around the country. We used EU money for that, and they now overconsume the biomass in a way that dramatically destroy the forests, for example. So we really need to regulate it, and who else, if not regions, should do it? So, of course, we need to develop the regional sustainable criteria for use of biomass. Another problem we have with hydro potential. This is also on many rivers. We are exceeding the natural limits. So we need to seriously deal with this issue, but we need capacities in regions for that. I don't believe that everything we can say from the state level. We need to have prepared, professional, very well-oriented people on the local level. And this is what we are trying to do. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Juraj. Indeed, very interesting and inspiring. And just to build on what you said in terms of the biomass, because I think this is really something that it's a hot issue in Slovakia. I think this is an opportunity also for the Commission and also us in the Parliament to look at the RED II as not something where, oh yes, we need to set up precise now kind of rules, but about setting better the framework and giving clear frame then to states, but ideally to the regions, kind of get the states to say, okay, we need the individual regions to follow these parameters, but look at it from the local conditions, because indeed, every region is different, even within the country. If you look at the regional differences can be fast. And this is where the local knowledge is really, really essential. But what I also like there is the big opportunity in what I sometimes see as halfway forgotten parts of, in Slovakia, but it's not only Slovakia, but parts of our countries where, we talk about transformation in the coal regions and heavy industry regions, but there is such an amazing potential for sustainable development, and that is environmental protection, that is about the social issues, that is about the economical stability and development, altogether within often marginalized and forgotten regions. And I think this is where it's going to be crucial how also the kind of the national recovery and resilience plans are done, as this aspect is not forgotten. And I also hope that the Commission will be taking also this perspective on the issue. But let me kick in from what I saw. So the questions that were also coming in, and try to ask the panel, what is your take on, because of very different and kind of perspectives on the issue, what is holding back the governments in the region from realizing this really vast potential of renewables and energy efficiency? Because I'm often puzzled myself why this is not seen as an opportunity, while it's seen also something that, oh yeah, we must kind of do it because the Brussels wants it, which is also not the case. So where do you see the biggest obstacle on the side of government, and how would you tell the government, or what would be your message to the governments that why this is really good thing to do? Anyone wants to start? Julian, you waved your hand, so I think it's
yeah. I do that all the time, and I don't know whether I'm successful in it, but I mean, one problem is the lobbying of incumbents, and also the linkage between conventional energy, state-owned energy sector and ministries. Ministries are has to separate themselves from companies, even when these companies are state-owned, because they can't promote properly new policies, because they're very often linked with the companies that they're managing. So they have intrinsic conflict of interest, which is not defined legally as conflict of interest, but it is a conflict of interest, and that stops the whole development. Obviously, the lobbying of incumbent energy sector, fear and corruption on various levels, from very small level corruption to a high level state capture. I mean, these are all sort of factors. But on the question how you promote the idea and kind of break that, one thing I would say is that I think it's very important to repeat again and again and again that if Eastern Europe lags behind, that will create a massive East-West gap in technology, in clean air, and also in low-cost electricity. And there is a big mistake that is made by associating new renewables with high electricity prices. It's exactly the opposite. Yes, old renewables were lifting prices up, but new renewables have the natural quality of driving prices of electricity down, and that should become quite clear. And we have to repeat it again and again and again.
Yeah, I'm answering muted. That doesn't work. Igor, please come in.
Yeah, maybe to add to Julian that I think it's slightly vary from country to country, and definitely there are some problems like corruption and so bigger and or smaller. Now we in Slovakia, for example, we are witnessing the great anti-corruption, let's say, months when the new government is able to really to solve the things that are not solved for many years. But it is not just this point is not solving the problem. What I see the problem also in the, let's say, politicians that are on the top level are responsible for the strategy, and also as we are talking about Central and Eastern Europe, about using of these funds that are coming and will come next year and the forthcoming years from the European Union. I think it's a lack of ambition also, and I'm not talking also only about the green, let's say, renewable energy. I'm talking generally about the understanding the innovations and innovative sector in general, because typically, and that's unfortunately here the situation last 30 years in most of the countries, that we were really closing this economical gap between the situation in 90s and where we are today. So people were very focused on this, and now as we achieved quite good position. It's something that we are relatively satisfied, and our ambition of the politicians and generally of the industry is that there were only few solutions that came from this part of the Europe as a global change. There were maybe some examples like Estonia, Skype, and the others, but generally what we feel from most of the, and 95% of the politicians, is that they are quite glad to adopt something, but they are not really with the mindset that yes, we can do the change and we can do something really significant, not only here in the country, but also contribute to the European perspective with some kind of solutions that could be as a case studies or something that could work. And that's for me maybe one of the important points, and the question also to you, Martin, and the others, that how we can convince the politicians that really here are the opportunities in this part of the Europe, and just we need to help them, because otherwise that's what we are witnessing, that many of the talented people, companies that are able to help in this, they are then moving maybe to another countries, to another sectors, and I think it's a pity, because a lot of things could happen here, and we need for that also the regulations, we need the public support, because initially, as also the projects that are doing some new innovations, they need some kind of the help from the government. Comparing, I know, US, there was always very strong military sector that was helping to the new technologies, and that is something that we are lacking, and definitely in Central Europe we don't have nothing like that. So it's very important now to use wisely the funds that will come in this anti-COVID and other programs that will be here. But my little bit fear is that they will be more used for the, let's say, business as usual, that will maybe help to some extent, but we will not solve the main problem, and that, I think, is a big objective.
Thank you. And there was additional from Morten about the role of utilities. Yes, Christina, please.
So regarding the utilities, I just would like to highlight that in past years, we have seen a major shift in the state-owned utilities, such as Polska Grupa Energetyczna or the Czech utility ČEZ. These companies are usually they know that they either are missing the train or has missed the train already, and they are investing in renewables and are trying to explore new assets. However, it is the combination of some of the governmental business as usual approaches, lack of capacities, and also lack of vision, I believe, on the side of the decision-making entities that are lagging behind. When it comes to the progressive utilities or the small ones that are leading, let's call it positive change or some innovation solutions, these are definitely important, especially when it comes to some regional or local best practice examples that in some forms can be used towards the government to increase the level of ambition, but it's a long track, obviously.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to come on this? No? I just have to mind the time, because we need to finish in 8 minutes, and we still have the closing remarks. What Igor, you said, but also what Julian said in terms of the lack of vision and basically the lack of ambition. I think this is for me kind of the big question of how to overcome the mentality, because we are we are the poor underdogs. In Slovakia, we often call ourselves a dove nation, kind of because we are just always those which are hurt and victims of everything else. The question is, if there is something, and if there is a way to combine the both, and for me, the in one hand innovative, what I call the cutting edge technology examples, with the almost kind of humble rural, very close to the ground approach that Jura is showcasing. And with both of the approaches have very for me, strong synergies to motivate the governments in the capitals to really kind of go for more ambition on this. I'm wondering if anyone of you has a short statement in terms of what is the learning, so to say, from the situation so far, and what would be kind of the one single message to the Commission when they are assessing the recovery and resilience plans from the member states? Anyone coming in fast? Yes, but you need to unmute yourself. Yes.
Maybe I would repeat, please keep it simple, because there is a lot of tools, and use the tools that are already working. So there are carbon permits, EU ETS working very well last 2 or 3 years. So expand that, don't undermine that, and definitely expand that. Also include the imports as the carbon border tax is targeting. And I think EU ETS could be the most important and efficient tool at this field.
Thank you. Anyone else, or reflections as Morten wrote on the issue of permits? If you see this as administrative burden, Christina, please.
Definitely. So regarding the permitting and the overcoming of the administrative barriers, just to illustrate, in Czech Republic, if you are a municipality and would like to put a photovoltaic panels on your rooftops, you need different 15 kind of contracts to be signed with 15 different entities. So imagine that you are understaffed municipal representative that have to negotiate, first of all, 15 contracts with external entities, and secondly, persuade the rest of your local government that these 15 contracts are solid, that are necessary, and that the price is enough. So just to illustrate how burdensome this could be.
Indeed. I think we even might be having a higher number than Slovakia that one needs to have signed or reported or these things. So, you know, we're trying to beat the fellow Czechs in being more bureaucratic. Good. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it here because I have to finish soon. So, Morten, can I ask you for some concluding words from your end?
So, Martin, thank you, and thanks to all the panelists. It's been really interesting for my part to learn more about renewables in the Central and Eastern European region, and not least reflections on the vast potential, as I understand it. And I think that there's a general point to be made in that the Commission, Hans van Steen, made at the very outset of our seminar, saying that I mean, we basically need a change in attitude, going away from considering renewables to be, I mean, something to subsidize, but emphasizing that renewables, in so many cases, are actually the cheapest form of energy if we do it right. So there is a dimension moving towards a future whereby we consider renewables to also on pricing issues to be the best way to go, basically, rather than having an old-fashioned approach to it, saying that renewables is some sort of like a hippie-like experiment that needs subsidies in order to survive. No, these are different types, different times. Obviously, we have the climate crisis that we have to confront and work with, but we have to consider renewables also being the cheapest way forward in terms of energy. And this has really been very interesting for my part to listen to and reflect to. So thank you to the entire panel, and thank you to you, Martin. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you too. And from my end, I'm not going to repeat myself. I just want to conclude with one hope that we will not see only the renewable energy project not blossoming only within Central Eastern Europe, but out of there. I would like to see the both the technological as well as the practical examples from the region being showcased on European and a global level as the way to go, rather than having to hear that we have to catch up. And I've been really honored to have the guests, the speakers and panelists from you today, because it gives me really confidence that this is to be expected. This is something which is on the way, and I hope that hopefully next year already we'll be able to come and visit many of the positive examples of renewable energies, energy efficiency, innovations and regional development that are making from Central and Eastern Europe the champion and not the laggard. So thank you everybody for participating. Thank you to the distinguished guests, and I hope that we can see each other soon again, and hopefully maybe also in person. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you too.